All right, family, I'm going to go ahead and get started with this lesson today. This is lesson 33 of Stronger in God's Word, the order of the kingdom, the order of the kingdom. And so I don't even have to do much talking just to set it up, but it'll be set up itself. You know, Jesus is going to talk as we always let him talk in his ministry, and we'll go ahead and get going, okay? So let's do it. And so number 17, 8 to 10, if you don't know, in the Stronger in God's Word class, we are in Numbers at this point. And so here we are in the 17th chapter. And so at the bottom of the chapter, here we are. It says, now the next day Moses went into the tent of the testimony, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds and produced blossoms, and it bore ripe almonds. Moses then brought out all the rods from the presence of the Lord to all the sons of Israel, and they looked, and each man took his rod. But the Lord said to Moses, put back the rod of Aaron before the testimony to be kept as a sign against the rebels, that you may put an end to their grumbling against me, so they will not die. Thus Moses did just as the Lord had commanded him, so he did. Then the sons of Israel spoke to Moses, saying, behold, we perish, we are dying, we are all dying. Everyone who comes near to the tabernacle of the Lord must die. Are we to perish completely? And so this is going to lead us into when it comes to fellowship with Jesus Christ. It's going to listen to that, because we have to understand something is that they're literally saying, this whole congregation, you know, Moses was not dying from being in his tabernacle. He was going in and out of the tent of meeting like it was nothing. Like he was allowed in the tabernacle. He was allowed in the tent of meeting. He was allowed in the most holy of places. But the reality is the congregation was not. And they were dying in being in the presence of that tabernacle. They were dying being in close relation to it. Like they could not be near it, or they felt death. And so we're going to get into this today about what this truly means through Christ. Obviously, we're going to allow him to explain it to us and through his own teaching. And so let's go ahead and get into this real quick. So we're going to start at Mark 8, 1 and 3. It says, in those days when there was again a large crowd and they had nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples and said to them, I feel compassion for the people because they have remained with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them away hungry to their homes, they will faint on the way, and some of them have come from a great distance. And so what's very important about the beginning of this story about him feeding he feeds these people, this large crowd, is that he's literally saying that they were with him for 3 days. For 3 days they were with him, and they were starving hungry. For 3 days they were with him, and they were starving hungry. Now, some of y'all you have to take off your fleshly eyes to understand what we're talking about. As we keep going, Jesus is definitely going to open your eyes to what he's talking about. But we have to understand something that in a sense he's talking about. You understand that we're going to it in a little bit, but he is the bread of life. And he is the one who feeds the soul, that satisfies us, so we're no longer hungry in his life and we're satisfied. But he's literally saying these people were with him. The large crowds were with him for 3 days, and they were still starving. And what he's trying to tell you is that this crowd of people, they could not eat from him. They could not. And so he says, if I send them away hungry to their homes, they will faint on the way. And some of them have come from a great distance. Now let's keep going real quick. Mark 8, 4 to 5 says, and his disciples answered him, where will anyone be able to find enough bread here in this desolate place to satisfy these people? And he was asking them, how many loaves do you have? And they said 7. And so he says, and the disciples answered him, where will anyone be able to find enough bread here in this desolate place to satisfy these people? And he was asking them, how many loaves do you have? And they said 7. I would love to go into the true meaning of a desolate place. I would love to do that. I'm not going to go that deep into it now. We have to understand that this land in this Bible, he really outlines it as he talks about putting the seeds in the soil and the concrete in the shallow soil and in the soil with the thorns and the fertile soil with no thorns in it. He's really trying to say that this is the receptiveness of the mind. A desolate land is a dead land. It's a dead place. It's a dead mind. But he's like, it's so dead here. Who's going to find food to give these people? And he asked them, how many loaves do you have? And they said 7. Now let's keep going. Then he says, and he directed the people to sit down on the ground. And taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks and broke them. And he started giving them to his disciples to serve to them. And they served them to the people. They also had a few small fish. And after he had blessed them, he ordered these to be served as well. And so it understands what's going on in the situation. What's going on? What's going on? He says he directed the people to sit down on the ground. And taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks and broke them and started giving them to his disciples to serve them. And they served them to the people. They also had a few small fish. And after he had blessed them, he ordered these to be served as well. And so what literally is happening is that, like I said, they could not eat from Jesus Christ directly. And so what did Jesus have to do? He had to break the bread and give it to the disciples who could eat from him. And they gave the bread to the people. This is the order of the kingdom, is that not everybody can eat from Jesus Christ. That only his disciples can receive bread from him. And then they receive the bread and they give it to the people. They serve the people. Let's keep going. And they ate and were satisfied, and they picked up 7 large baskets full of what was left over of the broken pieces. About 4,000 were there, and he sent them away. And so what's even more interesting about the situation is that when they give the word and they go up to pick up the basket of the bread again, these breads are full. They're full. They're full. And because the reality is that this is what Jesus says. He says that, like, one who does what is given, more will be given to him. More will be given to him. So if he gives you the word and you give out the word, you'll receive more of the word. But if you do nothing with what he gives you, what little you have will be taken away. That's what he said. If you're if you hear this talk, I hope that you've been reading what Jesus said. I can't put 30, 40 scriptures on the screen. I can just tell you the truth as it is. And so as it is, as he says, the one who does little, the one who does nothing what he's given, what little what he has will be taken away. But if you are faithful with what you are given, more will be allotted to you. And so the disciples are faithful with this bread they're given, and they serve the people. And so they receive more bread in the end. Now let's keep talking, because you still may not understand the reality of bread and what we're talking about here. So Matthew 16, 5-7 says, and the disciples came to the other side of the sea, and they had forgotten to bring any bread. Jesus said to them, watch out and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. They began to discuss this among themselves, saying, he said that because we did not bring any bread. Now, okay, let's keep reading. I ain't going to stop and say nothing yet. But Jesus, aware of this, said, you men of little faith, why do you discuss among yourselves that you have no bread? Do you not yet understand or remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000? How many baskets full you picked up? Or the 7 loaves of the 4,000? How many large baskets full you picked up? How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread? But beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Then they understood that he did not say to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And so you understand that bread he's not talking about physical bread. He's literally in your face telling you, I'm not talking about bread. I'm not talking about bread. Yes, these stories of the 7 loaves and the 4,000 and me feeding these many people, you're seeing the story, but you're not understanding that I'm not talking about bread, but beware of the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And his bread, Jesus Christ's bread, is pure. But he says, beware of the bread of other people. He's like, beware of their word, beware of their teaching, beware of it. Beware that it's not tainted. Beware that it's not changed. Beware that it's not spoiled. Beware the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. But this is also why we are called, just as the disciples did when they received the bread, they gave it back out just as purely as they got it. You're not called to make any alterations. You're not called to compare the bread that you received to the bread that someone else received. That's not what it is. You receive the bread from Christ, and you go and give it to other people. As purely as you got it. That is the order of the kingdom of heaven.
Now, John 6:41-42 says, therefore the Jews were grumbling about him because he said, I am the bread that came down out of heaven. They were saying, is not this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How does he now say, I have come down out of heaven? Jesus answered and said to them, do not grumble among yourselves. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up on the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they shall say, all be taught of God. Everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except the one who is from God. He has seen the Father. And so he's talking, and he's trying to get them to understand how he's the bread of life. But let me go ahead and keep going, because his bread, you understand, when we eat his bread, we are taught by God. But he said, everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. And this is the truth. He's literally saying, if God is teaching you this word and he's revealing you truth, he said, there's no way you won't come to me, because you'll recognize immediately that what I'm saying is the truth. But if you're not taught by God, if God is not leading you, if God is not leading your understanding, then that's why you deny me, because you don't know the truth. You're not taught by God. And so let's keep going real quick. John 6:47-51, he says, truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness and they died. I'm going to stop right there, because we all know that Jesus Christ is the word, but we have to understand that he is the full completion of the word. He is the word untainted. He is the pure word. And so some people read and understand that Jesus Christ is the word, and then you go back and say, well, he's the same word that's in Exodus. He's the same. He is that word, but he is the full completion of it. That word that was given in the wilderness was not a full completion of the word. He said, your fathers ate that manna in the wilderness and died. This is the bread which comes down out of heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. He said the bread, the manna they ate in that wilderness, the manna is bread. The bread they ate in the wilderness, they died from that bread, because it was tainted by it was tainted by human perception. It was tainted. But this bread that comes down out of heaven is bread from life, which is not tainted, which is given from a pure heart, which has no human reasoning, which is untouched by human standards. You will eat this bread. This is the living bread. Anyone that eats of it will not die. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread also, which I will give for the life of the world, of the world, is my flesh, which we know the word was made flesh. And so we have to understand that Jesus Christ is the bread of life. But this also goes back to him feeding people with the bread. We have to understand that not everyone can eat directly from him. Not everyone can receive that bread directly from him. Some people need a disciple to receive the bread. And it's not some people, it's most people. It was a large crowd of people that need those disciples to bring that bread to them. And so you have to understand that if you are able to read Jesus' words, if you're able to understand them, if you're able to eat that word, you are blessed, and you have a duty to go and give that bread to the crowds of people that cannot. That is the order of the kingdom. And so to sum this lesson up, and we'll be done for the day. It was a short one, but good one. Matthew 9:36-38 says, seeing the people, he felt compassion for them, because they were distressed and dispirited like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. And so he's literally saying that he needs workers. These people are dispirited and distressed. They cannot eat directly from Jesus Christ. People need disciples. They need them. And we have to understand also, as disciples, some of us are so stuck on that, we should be listening to Jesus Christ. But you understand, not everyone can do that. And yes, the message is you should listen to Jesus Christ. But the reality is not everyone can do that. Some people need disciples to listen to. And so also as a disciple, you have to understand the order and understand, yes, that's the message. Tell people that we need to be listening to Jesus Christ only, and that's it. That's true. But once you see that someone cannot listen to Jesus Christ, you have to be the person that bridges that gap for them to Jesus Christ. You have to be that. And you have to accept that in your heart that some people just need you to listen to you, and that's okay. But that's why your devotion to Jesus has to be pure, so that you're giving them the bread of life that came down straight from heaven. As he gave it to you, you have to give it to them. And be the worker. Be the worker that goes out into the harvest. Be the worker. And so, family, yes, and we have to understand that no, that there is no work that we can do that guarantees us salvation. But he does call us, that those of us that can come into him, that we should go to work. Go to work and feed these people, because they're distressed and dispirited like a sheep without a shepherd. And that's the end of today's lesson. The order of the kingdom. I hope you can come to understand what it really means to be able to eat that bread of life, and what you must do if you were able to eat from that bread of life. You got to go out into the world and give it as purely as you got it. Like he said, what I whisper in your ear, shout on the mountaintops. You got to do that. And so, fam, it's the order of the kingdom. I hope everyone has a blessed day. We'll be back on here tomorrow at noon for our Hunger and Thirst for Righteousness class. Have a blessed day.